guests today. I've got an old hand in Kelle and a new player today who's showing up for the first time, Elona. There's a lot of commonality there because I know everybody is into marketing and supporting other individuals' success. Chat's wide open, and we depend on chat to make us as relevant as we possibly can and create so many, hopefully, wonderful takeaways that justifies everybody's time, effort, and resources today. So with that, Kelle, I'll turn it over to you. Want to just mention that Kelle has the Awesome Journey live stream that's at 1:11 p.m. with Christy Howard every Tuesday. I'm so happy to have Kelle with me and Elona. So Kelle, why don't you start us out? I know the word of the day is scaling and how we can help people in defining it and maybe applying it. So Kelle.
Yeah. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. And please forgive me, I'm getting over a bit of laryngitis. And I probably talked too much yesterday. Shocker, I know. But yeah, so and a little side note, the Awesome Journey, I was not feeling well, so we didn't have it this Tuesday, but it will be tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. My time. So that's 12 p.m. Eastern time. In any event, scaling, what a great topic. I think, so many people, I've worked in a lot of startups, and this is definitely one of those areas that a lot of folks struggle in, not knowing how to balance, scaling. And how do you do that within your business? And I think it's a difficult one. It'll be an interesting thing what the audience has to say on this. Because I'll go back to what I always say. There's not an out of the box solution that applies to everyone because it'll always be a little bit different depending on your business, where your strengths are within your business. I think it's going to come down to, our core of what we talk about so often, Dawn, is about communication and collaboration. Your core team needs to know what is going on and be realistic about what's going on within your business. I've seen too many probably, and I think it's a common thing is, the CEO particularly can have their own interpretation of how the business is functioning, and it may not be realistic. And so maybe pushing in different areas to scale and wonder why that it's out of balance and things aren't working well. So again, I think, probably to start, I'll stick with kind of a basic and say it's really more about communication, and having your core people being on the same page and being realistic with truly how your business is running, and where you need to go operationally, tactically, and all of those good things. So I think that's a big foundation to start on there.
I think it's just great. And I'm going to switch it over to Elona. And since not that many people know Elona, maybe you could take a little bit of time explaining a little bit about who you are, what you do, and your initial thoughts on scaling. Welcome, Elona.
Thanks so much for having me here. I love today's topic. So it's right up in line with my mission and the work I do. But I want to say hi to you, Don and Kelle, and the audience as well. Thanks so much for tuning in. I love the engagement already because I've always been a big conversationalist. I think we can learn and grow from one another, speaking of scaling and evolving. And that's actually how I would define scaling. What I do in my day-to-day is really help people scale their purpose and profits in their companies so they can do more good in the world, focus in the service-based industry, because much like myself, I traded executive CEO, C-suite level for following my heart, following my purpose, following my life experience, and now in the vocation and the help of other people. And yeah, when it comes to scaling, to me, it equals evolution, right? Growth, contribution. We're always evolving as humans anyways. I do have more of a holistic outlook to scaling, even for companies that I work with or even personal life, because everything mirrors each other. And when it comes to, evolving and scaling, it's all about, again, evolution. What else can you do in the next step that you need to take as you expand towards that vision, mission, values that you have already clarified in your journey? And I find that specifically for companies, especially in today's environments that we are living in, we already have the bug of personal development. Most people are understanding that there's so much more to our potential. We will never actually realize it. Life is a journey, and we all will go through our trials and errors. But I think it's such a better life for a CEO, founder, or anyone really, to wake up in the morning and you always have those intentions very clear that you're going after, because it gives you juice, it gives you joy. And especially with today's world, that you can focus on things that light you up. There is no end to the impact that you get to create. So that's kind of how I would define scaling personally.
Hey, that is so cool. And you articulate it so well, Elona. And it really positions us to take it to the next level. I believe scaling is a matter of also prioritizing and state, right? Because today you do have so many options. And where do you put your time and attention and effort? And really, it should be prioritized and then staged. So, is it a long-term, short-term opportunity? With that, let me bring in the audience. Carl's here. I can never talk enough about Carl. He's advancing on all fronts. He established a daily newsletter. He's got over 160 editions now. And he just launched his weekly newsletter, which is a compilation of all of his daily newsletters. And his show is on every other Wednesday with me. He's involved with successful funding. Good morning, Kelle, Elona, and Don. Looking forward to high-speed growth discussion. Good for you. Here's Carrie with his joke of the day. You must have lots of fish, Kelle, since you are scaling. Also goes into silly jokes. The only thing is helping me hold it together. I will sit here and listen. Hope everyone is having a great day. I can see that I'm having trouble. Well, we're here for you, Carrie, and waiting for you. So hang in there. Good things will happen. Harvey's here. Can't talk enough about Harvey. Just a good friend and LinkedIn colleague. Hi, Don, Kelle, and Elona. Great to be here today. Been away on holidays, so nice to be back. I'm looking forward to a catch-up meeting, which we're having today, which is our Thursday bi-weekly collaborative Zoom, where all the live streamers here get together and share knowledge and experience and really help all of us scale better. Carl comes back. Hello, Carrie. And Carl comes back again with hello, Carrie, or was that me? And no, two hello, Carrie. So double attention to Carrie. So with that said, Kelle, how have you evolved over time with how you approach companies and how you help them scale?
Wow. I mean, I want to go back to, first of all, I want to say, Carrie, man, we're all here for you. And we're sending you just positive vibes and grateful that you're here and listening and hope you gain something inspiring. We're all in this together. And it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And we all know how important that is to me. So, man, just sending you positive thoughts and vibes, and grateful again to have you here. And I think Carl was correcting his spelling on the hellos.
Yeah, I didn't see the O, but good that we caught up with that.
Yeah. But so many good things about scaling, and really to go back, I think it's so individualistic depending on the business and where you are and where your strengths are. And I loved how Elona was talking, about the passion portion of it, because that's so much of it. I think so many of us had turning our passion into purpose during 2020. And likely you don't know Elona, but most of the audience does. I was laid off for the first time in 2020, and that was a massive shift in how I viewed how I wanted to do my own business or brand. I became in the accidental consulting space, I think like so many folks did. So building a business backwards kind of became a thing. And how do you begin to consider building a business backwards and then scaling? But really to go on what you both were saying about communication and your team, it really is just going back to the awareness of knowing like what is going on, where am I, and being realistic with it. I think that's the hardest part. Is we can have visions of I want to be in this place. But you need to be able to share that with your team and have them buy on, for lack of a better term. And I think that's a difficult thing now with the environment of people working at home. So many people struggle to see the vision, feel the goal, because when you're in an office in the surrounding and having those in-person meetings regularly, whether it's at the water cooler, the coffee machine, what have you have a different connection when you're in the office than you do when we're all working remote. So I think having that focus and having everyone have buy-on to see the goal, to see the vision and feel it and see it drive so much differently than, of course, when you have people who are completely disconnected and separated, um, because that moves you in a much slower pace, and it puts things off. And I think planning, and now I'm probably throwing out a little bit too much for this round, but I think planning is also a huge thing, and keeping track of those major milestones and adjusting all the time, because we can also have a plan in our mind. I love me a whiteboard, but it's there for you to have the vision, but also knowing once you put things into place and reach a milestone to revisit what the next steps are, because they may be totally different than what you thought they were going to be from the beginning. So I'm probably going all the way back around to communication with your team.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think being able to look back and then look where you are will tell you how much growth and change you're starting to experience, because people take things for granted that happen slowly over time, but compound over time also, and see significant differences. So,
Mhm.
Ilona, how do you measure your success as far as scaling, and how do you take it to the next step?
Yeah, I love what Kelly mentioned. And by the way, I started my business a little before COVID when the company that I was working for turned very profit driven. There was no future there. I didn't know obviously COVID was going to happen, but I think it's important to follow your heart when you feel like you're not. Now we have the word misalignment, right? We hear this
Mhm.
all over the place. I think we all feel that internally as humans when we're misaligned with what we're doing, or whether we're in a certain phase and stage of our journey that something needs to change or something else is calling us. So I think for a lot of people, COVID was definitely the birth of purpose for me, really,
Mhm.
if following, going within and figuring out, well,
Yeah.
what is it that I want to do? What's important to me. So I think clarity is important as well, back to what Kelly was saying. And I think, yeah, absolutely. We live in hybrid environments now. This is the world, right? So we got to be creative in the companies when they are communicating with their teams and engaging their teams and keeping people focused on the right priorities and the right
Mhm.
vision and mission. I think creativity is really important. I think it's all, channels of communication. We can leverage the virtual spaces, and we can also leverage the live opportunities if we can. I think all of us are doing that even with our businesses. And it's kind of where I'm seeing things also heading with AI and how things are developing and evolving in the marketplace. I think this is just how it is. I mean, the more virtual we go, the more human to human live interactions we will crave. So I think it's just always that dance of creativity. But for me, to answer your question, Don, how do I measure success? Right now, I measure success from the inside out. That's
Love it.
actually my personal story of, building the American dream, having all the success from the outside. However, feeling so, so misaligned on the inside. A lot of
Mhm.
healing inner work to do for sure. I think I'm a big proponent of that, even in companies, because when you heal the culture from the inside out, then your profits are just byproducts. Your
Mhm.
customer experience is just a byproduct. Your brand reputation just a byproduct, because you have
Yeah.
a very healthy environment, starting obviously with the leadership team, trickling down to the rest of the team members. And when that culture is really healthy, there's no way that the other metrics that most companies measure, which are important to companies, are not going to strive. So that's why I always say that every company needs to understand why they exist. That's why I always lead with purpose first, because if you don't understand the impact, the way that you're creating change in society with your product or service, it doesn't really matter, because there's a
Right.
reason why companies exist. And if you don't operate under values, which are not just things that you're just putting on your walls, but are things that people are living day to day, they're breathing those values and they become part of their DNA in the company, so to speak, because we
Mhm.
do are a product of our environment, and we are the average of the 5 people that we surround ourselves with. So I think it's just looking at it very holistically. Success is all about what, the evolution of the constant continuous improvement for everyone at the end of the day, and looking at those goals more holistically. I do get that obviously we have to have those, um, our North Stars and the things that we're achieving as an organization. But I think it's also important to allow for a creative environment where creative ideas come into play, where failures are turned into lessons and opportunities, where people are allowed to be creative, their strengths are allowed to be put into play and into the bigger decision making as well. Because I wrote my first book, Connecting the Vision Backwards. I think it's really important to look at where we came from, because that's the only information that we know, so we can make the very, effective decision in the present moment, leading into what is it that we're trying to achieve in the future. So connecting all those three very important dots in our personal life and in our professional life, which is our company, then I think it makes it for a more holistic approach to how we do business. And everything is energy at the end of the day. The people inside are, feeling the fulfillment, the happiness, they understand that their work is really important. It's connected to something important, and a bigger thing. Then motivation falls out of the way, and your productivity increases, your attention increases. People see that. There's two factors that I made me leave, and the company that I worked for lost top talent, I should say. It was lack of, I no longer saw that I could contribute to something bigger. I no longer felt aligned to that. And then there was no more growth opportunities. So if you want to keep retention, I think growth and contribution have to always be part of your culture as you scale and as you get to legacy levels where your company is getting bigger and you're expanding your markets, your services, your team, all the things that are really operationally sound to be able to get to the growth and the scaling of whatever phase of evolution of companies, because really the stages of growth of a company are just like human phases, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you get to a certain phase, you got to focus on certain things to be able to get to the next phase. It's actually very predictable and boring, I should say, but in a good way, because at the end of the day, it's its own, own entity made up of amazing, procedures, operations that really deliver the end result at the end of the day, and then the human resource, which is really very, very important as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you cover a lot of ground there, and it's all valuable. And I think at the end of the day, it has to make you happy and satisfied in your whole life, because there's always work and personal imbalance. And some people end up prioritizing things that are important in one area, but really have a negative impact on another. And it's hard to be happy when you're not balanced. And I think with the dynamic changes taking place today, you have to keep changing. You don't have a choice, because things are moving with or without you. And how do you get on the front end of it? And how are you open to change? And I think, you can't pour anything into a bottle until you take the top off, right? Until it's open for change. And, all these things make you want to think, but also justify collaboration, because everybody's an island. And if all you got is a loop going around your head, you're not going to learn much from it, and you might get frustrated. But when you're sharing and caring and working with other like-minded people, people will tell you, hopefully, an objective truth about what's going on. I've noticed this. I'm aware of that. I know kindness and fairness go a long way in communication. So it's really being able to make those changes and be a positive influence when you do it. And I think communication and projection are so important. They say people hear your music way before they hear your words. And if you're excited, positive, enthusiastic, people are a little bit more open to hearing what makes you that way and why they would like to get that way. Before switching over to Kelle, Dennis is here. 49 years in heating and air conditioning here in Colorado.
I love it.
That's definitely a sign that someone was able to pivot and reinvent themselves over 49 years, because It's definitely a different world than it was in the 70s. Also comes back with, it is great to write a book and share your wisdom. Thanks for still sharing and caring. Absolutely. And, kindness goes a long way, and it's in
Mm,
such short quantity. People don't recognize people like they should. They see things, they know things, but they don't communicate it because a lot of people are, give me something, I'll give you something back. And other people are free givers, just like we talk about Bob Berg with his Go
yeah,
Giver book. You got
yeah.
to really give to get, and you got to feel giving is in itself its own reward when it helps people. So, Kelle, I know you're such a big giver and you're such a great influence on so many people. How did you get to that point of being so generous?
Oh, wow. That's a big question, Don. I'm going to say it's my foundation, right? It came from how I was raised and the people that have been around me in my life. And to put this back into a business aspect, it's because I've been around some very great mentors in my career. I've been very lucky with that. And seeing, and Elona, you talked about so many things that I talk about all the time too. Culture isn't about the words that you paint on your lunchroom wall. It's about a feeling of the organization. And I've always been fascinated by how an organization operates and that's the people. How does this department intertwine with this department? And because it's a living, breathing organization, and it's fascinating to me, and I love the psychology of it. And I think what you learn about giving back, and again, I think it goes back to me having good mentors. They taught me what Alona was saying. Failing meant that I was trying and pushing the envelope, so it was celebrated. If you did the same mistake over and over again, there was clearly a problem. But if you're failing at something, and I've used this story on quite a few other shows, but I think it's so relevant because people think failure is the opposite of success sometimes, and it's like no, it's part of the process of success. That I went into a CEO after I had been promoted and was very nervous about the position because I was like, I don't know how to run this department. And he was like, well, that makes two of us. So good luck. And I had made an error. And it was one of those errors. I didn't know it existed until it showed, one of those whoops. But found a solution and what to do going forward to keep it from happening again and went into him and just said, hey, I made a big mistake and here's what happened. Here's what we need to do, or here's what I think we need to do, and here's what we should probably do going forward. And he was not at all unhappy with me. He was thrilled. He goes, hey, now I know you're doing your job. Keep failing. And it felt so different. And that allows you to be creative. And having that in my career at such a I think pertinent point, it allowed me to view my teams that way, to be like, hey, I want you to feel safe, supported, because that does create an environment of creativity, and that's what we want. That's what a community is. When we feel safe and supported, we're more apt to do more things. And to go to what Ilona was saying about, and I think Khan is the one that said this about people first. People will far exceed any expectation if you just let them feel like they're part of the process. Um, and I think one of the mistakes, and I'll end on this part of it, I think this time around, one of the mistakes I think a lot of teams that are trying to scale make is they're not transparent enough with the team. Because when the team does not feel, I'll go back to what I just said, I guess, then part of the process, it goes back to that whole feeling disconnected. They want to feel part of it and understand how things work because they will so far exceed your expectation and you can't put a price tag on that. Drilling people over and over again and just having them give you matrix over and over again, that's not really very inspiring. Saying thank you, having true appreciation, acknowledging their existence and their importance to the process, regardless of what it is within the organization, is huge. So I don't know. I think I'll leave it there right now.
That's a good place to start, and it's a good place to leave it for Elona. So, Elona, with this dynamic change that's taking place, and when we're talking about scaling, we're usually talking about people. right?
Mm.
It's very easy to say we need twice as much supplies and we can scale that pretty easily. It's what you do internally with who you're working with. And I think inclusiveness and I think transparency, because people know better. You know,
Yes.
people know when, hey, that's not true. And they're the ones who know it better than anybody else because they're usually on the front line. And it's hard to buy into something that you're not a believer in because
Hmm.
what it lends itself to is compromise,
Yeah.
right? Accommodation. And you
Yeah.
lose a little bit of your soul every time you have to say yes when you know it should be no,
It's the
or when
worst.
people create things and you never knew about it till it came out in an announcement. And now
Hmm.
you've got to participate and you never had any ownership. It's like getting a puppy and bringing it home without permission or review of anybody else in the family. It'll always be your puppy, not our puppy. And I think people just have to be aware. So Ilona, what's your thought?
I love it. I think what's coming up for me is I think you're leading into something really powerful, which we're all going through as a society anyway. Again, I look at things because I love neuroscience. Looking at things from different spectrums, because at the end of the day, if you understand us as ourselves first, right, then we're just, going to be compiled in teams and companies or jobs or families or, friendships. So I think is we're right now back to what you said, Don, in the era of authenticity. There's no more BS. The BS is coming up. All the shadows are coming to the surface, right? So I think it's really important to understand that we have to lead with integrity, and we also have to be making decisions that are questioned, right? A lot of the most important decisions when we make them as leaders, I like to do the 5 whys. That mine is Dean Graciosi's exercise. But when we're going deep into making decisions within, our companies and cultures, I think it's important to understand the reason why we're making a decision and how does that actually affect other people. And a lot of the times, the first four reasons why we want to make a certain decision is in our personal or professional life. It's superficial. There's always something deeper into that. So I think yeah, it's very important to be authentic and you being yourself as a leader first, because that's going to transfer and is going to allow your team to be themselves as well in the process. And people that are heard and seen, we've all probably heard this in just many different ways. Will absolutely be people that have their guard down, their creativity's out, they will be productive, they will think of creative ways to solve problems, solutions. And these are the companies that are always we admire, right? The Steve Jobs, the Apples, companies that are Amazon that have really dominated industries, not in the masculine energy way, but also obviously because they've created impact and they've created jobs out there in society and all of that. So I think, yeah, it's honestly what I'm feeling also myself, because I'm also a rebel entrepreneur. When everybody to zig, you just zag pretty much. Follow your own intuition. I think that's another powerful thing. That's really we're understanding it as humans now that we have it inside of us. It's like a very strong arsenal, and if we could teach that to our teams as well, don't lead out of lackness and kind of just empowerment that if my team become highly intuitive, they're gonna do this or that. That's what they have tried to do with humans, keep us into boxes and keep us into certain programming. But when we open that up, I mean, it's a whole big universe, like because we're really just tiny dots at the end of the day. But I also love your question with service. I've realized that anything in my life, and I think Kelly just mentioned it so well, because again, we have our values. A lot of our values are instilled. They say what up to age 10, psychology
Hmm.
says, from the people around us. So I think definitely seeing service also in my personal family has also been something that was really important to me. But also the other most important part is when I've seen that, wait, where is my happiness coming from? A lot of the hardest moments in my life was when I came out of myself and did something for somebody else. And
Yeah.
always thought of, okay, so And every time I wanted to quit, or every time I went into my own selfish needs, I was always miserable and unhappy. And I couldn't just add value and contribute to others. So I just paid attention to a lot of these things also with teams and people. And I'm like, wait, that's what we're here to do. We're here to contribute beyond ourselves and be in service to others. So just connect with two of my own dots as I got older. I think that's where it's at, because at the end of the day, I mean, you will always be happy when you add value to somebody else's life. And when you talk about scaling in society, hopefully your company is that channel to be able to add value to as many people's lives as possible. So you having that very clear mission and purpose will absolutely ensure that you are in the right track and you're doing it for the right reason, which I think that's another very important piece.
Amen. Love it.
That's great. And I think we're really encapsulating it in a wonderful, digestible way that people can pick up some pretty good tips here, because we're all in the same boat, right? We still share the same earth. And, you know, a lot of what used to be values have been forgotten. And some are universal values, right? Like respect, like being civil, like being thoughtful. You know, most people don't have time. They get right to something and then you move, just like, you know, how you browse. See something for a second, move on to a second. And slowing down is very important. Catching your breath, having time to reflect, having time to review, and also having a group that provides quality feedback that you can go to and say, you know, just share with me what you see, what you're thinking about what I'm doing. Because if you want to scale, you're not enough as an individual to do it by yourself, right? You need a group. You need to be 10% of 10 instead of 100% of one, because it's all or nothing every day. And it's you against you or you for you. With that said, we got a bunch of comments that just came through. Harvey, who has his franchise show that follows our show here and precedes Kelle's show, which is the franchise show. And then Harvey launched a branding franchise show on Thursday. So he's scaling and doing so well. You know, I'm so proud of the people that are here that we're working closely with, because success is its own reward. It defines itself. You know, no one cares how you lost. No one has time for that, but everybody wants to know how you succeeded. And I don't see anything as a loss. I think you're either learning or earning, or maybe both. So it's perspective. You know, don't be too harsh on yourself. You got to be your own best friend when there isn't anybody around. And you got to find ways to get out of ruts, not just justify them and take responsibility. So Dennis says, agree, learn from your mistakes, and sharing your new wisdom works to inspire others. Beverly's here. I can't ever say enough about Beverly. Was every Tuesday with me. The show is Women's Empowerment. Beverly's up in Montreal, a therapist, and focuses just on women over 50 who are transitioning at a certain point, and is such a wonderful colleague and addition to the group and to the show. We've got a new name I'm not aware of, SD Burrell Worldwide, Beverly Hills. Well, it's a great mailing address. Beverly comes back exactly, Elona. Integrity is the only way. As we guy is moving faster for sure. Then we have must be Carrie. Not sure if anyone wants to share a boat with me. Well, you're always welcome on this boat. Carl comes back, but please address how scaling may require change in culture and leadership. Startup and founder mindset. Well, Kelle, you're an expert at helping startups and founders find their way. What's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great one, and it goes back to so much what we're saying. And, you know, I think, and I've seen this many a times, right? Especially if you're coming from a startup environment, you generally are running a scrappy team, right? And you're stressing them, you're pushing them to their limits. And you likely have people in positions that they shouldn't be in, meaning you've given them titles that they likely shouldn't have. because everybody's a VP when you're a startup, because there's only 5 of us. So why shouldn't we be all VPs? And then when you start to build upon that, there does come a time of now, how are we going to adjust and reorganize to scale? And I think there's so many things that go in this, but I think to go down to the culture level, this is where I think a lot of organizations make a mistake. They need to take the time to work with their, and I'm just going to use department heads just so it won't get too technical. But if your department heads aren't bought on to your plan of growth and where you're going, you're going to have issue, because they're the ones that are going to carry it down to the culture, the boots on the ground, if you will. You need to have a change management plan of what this is going to look like. People don't like change, specifically in an organization. If I come in and I'm going to my desk and I do the same tasks every day, and you come in one day and you tell me next week I'm going to start doing everything different, I'm not going to like that, because I'm going to feel threatened. We don't like that as human beings. But if we do things, and this is just like anything else in life, if we, like Don, when he started doing his lives 2 years ago, and you did 700 and some in a row, if someone would have ever have said, Don, I need you to do 752 live shows in a row, you'd have been like, you're out of your mind. Like, that just sounds like something, it's too much. But you just approached it day by day, and all of a sudden, one turned into 752. It's the same in an organization. If you drip in the change, it's not as jarring, and then it's stomached. We can adjust to minor things over time. And it's also about how it's delivered. And this goes back just to the whole human factor of all of it, and then which really is at the core of everything. Because if the people that are passing along the message, they don't believe it, you can act like it, you can pretend like you're thrilled, but people will know. We smell through all of that. You can maybe fake it one time, but you won't be able to fake it over time. So I just think it's important to get buy-on and have a plan of change management. How am I going to sweep this across the organization? How are we going to change titles of people and make them not feel like they're being demoted or that their value is less? I mean, these are big deals to people. And like Elona said earlier, and this happens a lot when people who are your top talents, and we all know who they are in an organization, we all do. Um, when they go quiet and they're not participating anymore, boy, you better start asking some questions and getting your finger on the pulse, because there's something severely wrong. And you as a management team and as leaders, you're the ones that have failed, not the people that have gone quiet and aren't performing the same. And I think that has so much to do with how you go across this plan, because it is about matrix numbers and all those things. It's an organization. That's how you survive, is by revenues. But you also don't get those revenues unless you've got a team of people who believe and support it. Um, so I think that the human approach is just at the core of all of it, quite honestly.
Yeah, I think you make so many wonderful points, and everything's an investment, whether it's time, whether it's resources, whether it's people. But people are the main ingredient that can define the difference between success and failure, because of those people who love the culture, love the team they're on, and will go above and beyond naturally to make it more successful. And there's something about pride. There's something about belonging to something that is bigger than yourself and allows you to be all that you can be with yourself and then with others. And most people hire somebody and it's like set and forget, right? Versus you made an investment. Are you going to reinvest? Are you going to offer more training? Are you going to offer programs that really identify what people's personal needs may be? Because everybody comes home to somebody. Everybody has a family. Everybody has friends. If they're feeling good, if they're happy, their friends are going to feel happy for them, and they're going to be better for it. But if all you're doing is just enough, that's all you're going to expect to get, and maybe less. And it's hard to turn around a ship once it's already moving, right? So it's those building blocks, those initial here's why we're here. Why you're so important to us. Because
Mm-hmm.
we have every element that makes someone want to work hard for a company. It's recognition.
Yeah.
Money becomes an entitlement and benefit after a while. You get your raise, and before you know it, it's spent somewhere, and now you have to have it, or you're looking forward to it. But when you can get a plaque or a gift or a trip or something and take somebody along with you, that'll make so much difference. And when you think of how much of that is a benefit that isn't just medical benefit or time off, but it's really being available. People talk about open door policies. The door may be open, but the person behind it may not be, right? So you'll
Yeah.
walk in, but not but you're not going to get full attention unless, and I think Kelly and Elona make a great point. I always say time will either expose you or promote you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing live streaming, because there's no hiding. And people have a good memory. Well, you said this, but now you're doing that. And it doesn't mean what you said. And people get confused. And then they don't have trust. And I think
Mm-hmm.
about communication, it's all based on trust, because if you don't trust a person, doesn't matter what they say,
That's
you're
right.
not going to buy into it. And just want to mention that Carl has a show that precedes this show on Tuesdays, Successful Funding. And, with that said, what's your thoughts towards Carl's question, Elona?
Yeah, I love this question. As Kelle was speaking, and she was sharing so much wisdom in what she was sharing. I think it's the difference to going from startup to founders, always the level of leadership. And traditionally, I've also fell in the trap of, okay, this is something that we're born with. You're either a leader or you're not, right? Because society
Mm-hmm.
loves to give us the white and the black and white outlook. But I think it's really, if you understand how to implement continuous improvement within yourself, because I think a lot of leaders can't enforce that and just like anything, you can't portray or project anything onto anyone else unless that is something that you have it as an important value in yourself. So I
Yeah.
think continuous improvement of you as a human being and then implementing that and showcasing that within your team, I think that's actually a very important piece and value, because even if a big project, like Kelle was saying, comes onto play, or we need to maybe shift certain priorities, because the company is always going to evolve. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't honestly see any more companies that are traditionally stable doing the same role that you've done for 40 years. I mean, that world is gone. Today, companies are evolving every day, right? So I think it's important for the leader first to be very comfortable with just continuous improvement every day. And I see the same equivalent when you tell people about purpose. And the same with me, it would overwhelm me. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like a big purpose. Like, what's my life's purpose? Like, what I'm supposed to do? And honestly, there's no such thing. It's just a matter of clarifying what is it that we're doing, why is that important to us, clarifying the why, and then the rest of the process of getting there, it's all going to be a process of evolution. And if
Mhm.
leaders put more importance and recognition on the process of becoming for people rather than a lot of those outside results that we usually put a lot of importance under, I
Yeah.
think everybody's going to just become the better performer with the company eventually as well, and the results is going to just be a byproduct of things. I don't know. For me, I've always been like, what's at the bottom of this? What's the foundational pieces that if we look at that if we take care of that, then all these other things are just going to be a byproduct. But I think it's also important to be very conscious around recognition. Just like anything, not everyone it gets motivated by gifts, which is on the money side, right? Understanding. I don't know if anyone read the Five Love Languages, but I love those because I
Yes.
think we're all working with humans at the end of the day. Maybe one of your team members just loves words of appreciation, and that's
Mhm.
their cup. So just training your leaders and people to have different ways that we recognize inside the culture so that it's meeting the needs of each of the different individuals that you have. Because again, if people's needs are met, no one's going anywhere. and,
Right.
and they're always going to be evolving with you. So yeah, that's kind of what's coming up for me based on the question laid out there.
Well,
I
that's
love it.
beautiful.
I just want to add
Please.
a little addition to that because I love so many things that you just said. Is people tend to forget, especially from a leadership perspective, that not I love the 5 love languages aspect because I've always managed my team as individuals, not out of a bucket or out of a box, saying I manage each person. Each person learns different. Each person, like you said, appreciates things different. Some people like to be called out at the company annual meeting to have recognition, and there's others that would mortify them. Um, but it's taking the time to understand the people and what does resonate with them, what works with them. Um, so I think it's just important too. It goes back to the whole human thing and remembering that people are different. We learn different. And the other point I wanted to make, and this is just my feeling, and I sometimes say this is old school, but I think it should be always school, is management. I 100% agree with you should always be learning. Like I was always taking some kind of class or course or what's new and if my team members were doing something new, I didn't learn it to be able to do it. I would learn enough so I understood how to be able to, and I want people to understand this right, to defend my team because you can't manage what you don't know. And this happens in a lot, especially in a marketing position. I could have leaders ask me like, well, why on earth is this taking so long to get you to have this printed through fulfillment and do this, this, and this? If I didn't know each process intricately enough and be able to defend my team to say, well, we have in the critical path that it's 3 to 5 days. This just so happened to take 4. Well, why can't we do it in 2? Well, because this is how it operates. This is how much time this takes. This is how much time this takes. Because even as leaders, we still need to manage up and be able to again protect our team. But I think that helps us lead our team better because the expectation of then your team member is realistic if you didn't understand how long it took someone to work in certain Adobe programs to create something, oh, you want a print document that's press ready, or you want something that's an electronic document, those are two totally different things and they take totally different time. um, it's so important to understand those things to be able to manage it properly. And I think that's where a lot of managers fail their teams is not understanding individually what they do because then their expectations are off. And you can only push somebody so far before they'll finally go, well, what's the point? Because every time you give me a task and you give me this unrealistic timeline, I'm failing. So why am I even going to bother to try? So I just thought those were super important points is about managing, you can't manage what you don't know, my opinion. And managing each individual as an individual, understanding what motivates them and how to keep them engaged.
Well, I think that makes so much sense because it also leverages time efficiency, right? If
Yeah.
you're going to spend time with someone, what's the best time you could spend and what do they need? And
Yeah.
asking questions and buying some vowels before you solve the puzzle makes a lot of sense because too many people presume something.
Yes.
Those people are data driven. I saw a report, but they don't have context,
Yeah.
and people are measured on a scale. And, the other thing is being human with humans. Even when I had my own businesses, I told everybody's equal as a person here, right?
Yeah.
And everybody deserves that individual respect. The only thing that differentiates people is not their title, but how they perform their responsibilities.
Hmm.
And a lot of people would come in and say, well, I hate starting at the bottom. I said, well, it's up to you to decide how long you want to be there, right?
Yeah.
Start climbing, start learning, start reaching out, start getting better. And I think the other element that really is a thread that goes through everything is gratitude,
Amen.
being thankful instead of taking people for granted. People go off to the next person for whatever reason, leave other people behind and neglect. I always equate it to a garden. if you don't fortify it, if you don't water it, if you don't take care of it on a daily basis, it'll wilt. And then it's hard to get it back because the reason the way it did is because you didn't take care of it the first time. And people get loud and they get impactful and they create stress. And fear is never a good motivator in a workplace because
Never works. Never.
That's right. And you might get people nodding their head, and when you leave the room, everybody's like, "This is I hate these meetings. They're all the same. It's all about you didn't do enough, you didn't do enough." And I always told people if you're at a high position, the reason you're there is because you know enough and you can help people get up to that position.
Yes.
Right? It's not a situation, and you find that in sometimes family businesses where some nephew or fool gets the position who doesn't know anything. And it just takes that drive away from people, and you want a company where people can't wait for Mondays, not counting the days till Fridays. And really have, because I used to tell people when I hired them, I got to be with you all the time too. If you're not bringing me up and making me feel better from having you around, then you're bringing me down. And if you're bringing me down, you're probably bringing other people down. But it is trust. Most people would rather get permission than forgiveness. But most people will do things without permission because, first of all, they probably know they wouldn't get it. And second of all, it's just not a good match. And I think when you look at the cost of retention, of having to rehire, retrain new people, you're going on this wheel that never ends. And if a person doesn't know any better, they get more frustrated. And instead of taking the responsibility and being accountable, and how refreshing is it when a CEO says, I made some really bad mistakes in the last few months, and I'm recognizing them, and I'm going to do better, right? And I think that goes both ways. If someone who's really a good employee screwed up a little bit, comes in and comes clean and says, I didn't intend this, but it happened, and I hope you understand. And they're sincere and transparent. If you're a good person, you have an open heart. And you appreciate the style, not always the substance, right? Because someone makes a mistake, costs you $5, no big deal. Someone makes a $5,000 mistake, it should still be no big deal because it was still a mistake, but now the amount starts to change everything. We've got Omar here. Omar's a regular. Sounds good. Is a regular here, has Zoom party. I know that Elona has to leave in a couple minutes, so why don't you share your final thoughts with us about your first appearance here and how the show is going?
This has been such a great conversation, Don and Kelly. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I love these high level conversations because, again, it's food for thought, right? It makes us shift our thinking. A lot of the things that we thought were working are no longer working. So obviously, in the process, in the heart of continuous improvement, I think that's kind of the theme of what we've been talking about. I think it's important to understand that just always challenge old ways of working and thinking. And there's, because whatever is it that we probably have thought were the right ways that, worked, there's always better ways to be able to do things. And at the end of the day, that's how you win, by bringing in new, fresh ideas as a founder and CEO, and by bringing in something new, creative, innovative to your industry, to your marketplace, to your clients, to your customers, and all of that. I think one thing that came up for me, Don, as you were sharing that, I think it's the power of intentional questions. I think it's important that we ask our team and ourselves intentional questions, because quality questions, will dictate for great quality conversations. And then that's how you get to help your team to creatively also think and innovate and be creative, because these are the needs of where we're going in today's world. There's no more need of old boring processes and systems that we need our team to be able to be putting their head on. So it's really about asking really high level intentional questions to spark our own geniuses and gifts and talents and experiences, and leveraging everybody's diverse experiences. I think that's really going to be the next level leadership, or really the main responsibility of a great leader, that is, leading their organization to the next level. Because if we can hold these spaces that, just like here, where we're having these conversations and asking really intentional questions to ourselves, then we can learn from one another, and your team will come up with their own answers to things, back to what we were saying. But I think I've seen this in my own personal company and life as well. Intentional questions will also, if you are smart with your communication, which is an art, and it's something that we can also improve over time, we can also lead and mold things in the right direction, back
Yes.
to where is it that we think something is going to serve the highest need or the highest good of our mission, our cause, or where we're going.
Well, that's so wonderful. And what you demonstrate, Elona, is you're a real person, and you really shine in real conversations with real people. And that's so important, to be able to articulate that. And I know you've helped so many people who now are listening today, but will continue to hear our words into tomorrow, people we never know or will never meet. But we created value that continues as a legacy for us and as a gift to people coming forward again in the future. So thank you again, Elona. It's been a pleasure
Thank you.
having you back.
Thanks for having me. Bye, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And want to also share that Beverly has her new newsletter out, which is Purpose and Passion. It's a weekly newsletter.
Love
and
it.
and she also has her podcast, which is a really, really important one, Aging with Purpose and Passion. And I think that's the key that really underlies what we talked about, is recognizing people for when they do something new, when they step out of their comfort zone and start a new initiative with new people. And it's scary. It's easier to do nothing, but
Yeah.
nothing will get you nothing. And at a certain point, you'd rather be the person who's taking action than is just reacting to things around yourself. And you never know what you're capable of. Just like you don't know what you don't know, you don't know what potential you may have, and the situations that get created that allow you to be all that you can be. And I think by learning from Elona and Kelly and everybody here today, it drives everybody to want to do another show, because you get tips, you get motivated, you get educated, and a lot of times you get entertained. And
Yeah.
who doesn't need a laugh or
Yes.
something like that? And one last thing is to be able to live vicariously through others. I'm so proud of Kelly and everybody here. And when anybody achieves some level of success or happiness, it just feels as good as if I did it, because in essence, we all do it together. And
Yes.
everybody plays a role. So, Kelly, this has been a fantastic show. What's your final thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, of course, it's right up my alley for so many reasons. I do want to throw out one last thing for people who maybe are thinking about scaling. Is another option is always to, it's just a freebie at the end here, is always to go external, to get a third party to come in and do an analysis of your current team, whether it's your leadership team, because they do some really rad ones now. They come in and it'll be an assessment, and it will show how each person actually works together on your team, and give you as a CEO or your leadership team a holistic look of where your true strengths and weaknesses are within the people that you have running certain parts. So I think there's so many awesome tools available to help. It's just about how far we want to go with that and really look into it. And I just love the core of all of it, because it's all about community and about people first. And it's about providing a place where people feel safe, supported, so that they can succeed. And to go off what you said, is we're not in competition together. We're all in this together. We're all headed towards the same destination. And why not enjoy the ride while we're on it together. And as we do wrap, and like I always like to say, it's just one of those things that, hey, well, we hope that you go out and shine so bright that others can't help but shine too.
Well, you're one of the brightest stars in the group, Kelly, and that's what makes every show worthwhile, as almost it's a new show, because it builds on all the past experiences, and you have that anticipation that, hey, this is going to be a great day just because I'm going to spend an hour with somebody that's really a quality person and makes me a better person for being around them. So it's a two-way street. Want to thank everybody. We're right on the dot today.
Yeah.
And want to invite people back Monday. Got a great show. Let me just share with you. It's going to be myself, Mitch Carson, which is a new person, and Carl. And then Tuesday is another new person, Lance Slayton, who's into helping assisted living centers and has a YouTube channel with, I don't know, 100,000 or 1 million subscribers. And then me and Dave and Jason will be here on Wednesday. And then me and Kelly will be back on Thursday. So go out, have the best day of your life, and know that we're here for you, and are really enjoying everybody's company and recognizing everybody's value. So with that said, talk to you Monday.